Welcome to the Fantasy NASCAR podcast brought to you by RaceForThePrize.com. Let's talk about Sonoma on Sunday morning. This is not a picks video. Unfortunately or fortunately, this is one of those days where I'm just not certain. It's going to be a check back with me later, check the sheet, see what I learned throughout the day. But where I stand right now, and I think everyone probably is in the same position with a lot of the unknowns, and this generally being a road course where the fields are all pretty equal, there are some picks that stand out. We'll talk about them. But really, as I mentioned in the previous podcast this week, all the drivers in the top 25 have a legitimate shot at the top 10. If you did not listen to that podcast, I went into 7 reasons why the competition gap is not that wide. You can also check out the YouTube short that quickly explains it. But when you've got a field that's this tight, it is very difficult to have a picks video. But at the same time, you can feel a lot more comfortable chasing place differential towards the back. And maybe that's where we start. Maybe we start at the top. It's completely up to you. Well, not really, because it's my podcast. So I guess I will have to ultimately decide where we start. We'll look at value. Might as well do it with point per dollar plays. Again, racefortheprize.com. That's where you can get access to all the lap by lap data. If you want to analyze every single lap of these drivers, look at their specific runs and find out who you want to lean on. Although practice data could be misleading. Running in practice at Sonoma, it's not the same as actually competing in a race where you're trying to pass. People are trying to pass you. You're trying to limit mistakes. Whereas in practice, you've got some people towards the end throwing on hot new tires, which we're probably not going to see much of, laying down hot laps. And you've got other guys just trying to get a rhythm and a flow. But again, that rhythm and a flow is not necessarily in traffic, so it's not completely indicative of what they'll do during the race. But it's up to you how you want to interpret the data. You want the data, Venmo, PayPal, Cash App. It's in the description below. It's raceforprize.com. 26th for June, pick 52 for June and July. It's there for you. It will be updated throughout the day. We will start with Ryan Preece. I talked about Ryan Preece earlier in the week. And I like generally what his approach has been at the road courses. He's not going to try to be a hero. He hasn't tried to be a hero. He has been pretty consistent. We look at some of his laps, and he did have some consistent runs. Look, did he light up the scoreboard? No. But did he lay down some generally decent laps? Yes. Sure, would love to see more. Now, this looks pretty slow, doesn't it? But overall, I like the fact that he went out and stayed consistent lap after lap, 10 laps at the beginning of practice. They were all slow to start out. They all picked up speed later. And again, they're slow because in comparison to later laps, they all picked up speed. Overall, you compare this long run to the other drivers in this general long run, he should be able to get into the top 20 or around 20th place based on what he's done in previous races, based on his approach. I like slow and steady. I like the tortoise over the hare. I have no problem going to Ryan Preece as a value pick. Tyler Reddick. You got to pick who you want to lead this lap. And there are a handful. You've got the Hendrick Chevys who all unloaded fast. Good in practice, good in qualifying, good in general at road courses. We've seen the JGR Toyotas take a step back. They missed the setup. That pushes Hendrick forward. They're within striking distance. You're going to have to make your call, and maybe you pick 2, but overall, I really like Tyler Reddick. One of the things, again, I like about Tyler Reddick, although maybe he didn't completely light up the scoreboard, in practice, I really like the run that he did on his second run. If I can find him on my sheet. Again, doesn't really light things up, but I love the approach. I love the consistency of these 10 laps. And then he goes out later and puts down a very solid, long run. Where's the high-end speed? Well, then he showed you the high-end speed when he got into qualifying and is right up front. If I had to pick right now, and I believe I will take 2 lap leaders, Reddick's going to be one of them. A Hendrick driver will be the next on my list. I don't think that's a controversial take. So from there, you want to put Elliott as a lap leader, he'll jump up the value board. You think it'll be Larson? You think it'll be Byron? they'll jump up to the top of the board. Now, point per dollar wise, obviously Chase Elliott at 9,300 is going to show up as a better play point per dollar wise right now. But if he doesn't lead laps and Larson does or Byron does, then obviously that will all change. Those are the favorites for those places. Now we got this interesting Zane Smith play. Overall, Spire Motorsports seems to have pretty good cars. Hocevar, LaJoy, Zane Smith all showed up well. And yes, there's going to be concerns with Zane Smith and Hocevar lacking road course experience. Drivers that have gone from the Truck Series, skipping the developmental road course phase of the Xfinity Series where you're running 5-6 road courses and going straight into Cup, they're a little green compared to the rest of the drivers. And to see them get through these 70 or so laps, it is a concern, obviously. But I like what I saw out of Zane Smith in practice. He is cheap. I do believe he has a legitimate shot at a top 15. As I said before, any of the drivers in the top 25, and Zane Smith is borderline fringe top 25. But in this given week, he seems to be a top 25 driver, can get into the top 15. If he can maintain track position and hang on, move a couple spots forward, it works. You may not need to go down to this tier, 5,400, but he's in play. And he's going to carry lower ownership than Josh Berry, who I suspect will carry more. Josh Berry participated in the tire test. Josh Berry, not terrible in practice. We have seen the number 4 car with Kevin Harvick have a pretty conservative approach over the years. I don't believe Josh Berry, starting 32nd, is going to go into hero mode and try to win the race. Whereas maybe some of the drivers closer to the front, in tougher situations like SHR drivers, his fellow teammates who are a little close to the front, may switch into hero mode and really try to make a splash, and in doing so be more aggressive and lose spots. It is not a stretch to see him get to 20th. Based on the notes they should have, based on decent practice running, if we look at his general practice data for Josh Berry, we've got finishing 20th. Let's sort this by the starting grid. Again, I apologize for not giving the straight picks, but this is kind of the early point per dollar place that I am leaning. Obviously, this will change stuff today, so check out the Fantasy NASCAR spreadsheet as the sheet loads. And if we look at his general laps, 12th fastest on a single run. Best 4 laps, if we were to take his 4 best laps, it's maybe not the best indicator, or you can take 5 in a row with the best 5. Looks like a 22nd to 23rd place car. You add in the notes. Hopefully he has the similar conservative approach that we have seen from Kevin Harvick that has led him to be optimal in the last couple of seasons. The stage maybe goes his way. Maybe he catches a caution. Either way, expect people to go in that direction for ownership. Don't mind that. Zane Smith, a little bit more of a differentiation. Logano showing up as a decent point per dollar play, but that's with an aggressive projection of 3. Look, if he runs away with stage 1, which I don't think is going to happen with Tyler Reddick right there and Hendrick cars right there, it will be hard to pass, but I think they will be able to get it done. Logano has been pretty good at road courses. Loved this play earlier in the week as a driver with a top 10 with place differential, but he's no longer that play. In that spot, he needs to lead some the first stage, and he can't finish worse than the top 5. That's pretty aggressive for him to hang on, hold off the Hendrick cars, hold off Reddick, hold off even the Trackhouse cars. And I would imagine like Ty Gibbs, AJ, McDowell, they're all going to come calling at the end. And I wouldn't completely write off JGR and the Toyotas, although they are in a bad starting spot, and I think that does limit their upside. But I wouldn't completely write them off the board. So that's a pretty aggressive projection. I don't think you really need to go there. Daniel Suarez may seem pretty aggressive as well. We do know he has the road course background. Trackhouse does have the notes, like we saw at practice. Qualified well. Not incredibly expensive. The guy is consistently getting into the top 10 in these road courses. He's consistently running in the top 15, which is going to keep him in the game. Now, we're going to need a little bit more than running in the top 15. So that is a little bit of a downgrade. But personally, Suarez and Bowman are two of these drivers that just don't get enough respect for their ability at road courses, and both have the capability of top five. Bowman's going to be a lot easier to go to. He is cheaper, and their cars are fast, and you can argue that Bowman's resume's been, although he doesn't have the win, Bowman's resume's been much stronger, more consistently in the top 10, whereas Suarez is more consistently in the top 15. Suarez does have the win at Sonoma from the past, but I don't want to overreact to one win. And Bowman will cut the ownership. Bowman's a safer play, although they are basically starting in the same position. If you really want to get different, I think you would slide into Suarez a little more than Bowman. But both, I'm happy to roster in that middle tier range. And I know we want to chase place differential, and I think that's where a lot of plays are going to go. So you probably will get a little bit depreciated ownership on both of those as well. Not super happy about having to chase this place differential, but at the end of the day, based on track history, even Keselowski has not been the greatest road course racer, and Sonoma necessarily hasn't been his best over, his long career. But to see him finish outside the top 20, you look at those other drivers, he should be able to methodically get his way there. Don't think he's going to go into hero mode. Imagine he's just going to go out there and put in a yeoman's effort. There are concerns that maybe with RFK adding that third team, resources didn't get allotted the way that maybe they should have, or Keselowski's got his hands in too many things. And maybe when it comes race time, he could step up a little bit. Or maybe they just don't have it because they've spread the team too thin with the additional car and the additional responsibilities. That's a lot of narratives that you can read into. But at the end of the day, starting 35th, it is an RFK car. It is $7,000. To get to 18th is not a stretch. If you were spending $9,000 on Brad Keselowski, it would be much more worrisome, more of a concern. But at that price tag, with this starting position, I don't think you're that concerned. Same thing with Kyle Busch. Again, most people are probably not going to want to play Bowman Suarez, who we liked earlier in the week in this price range. We like Kyle Busch as well. And yeah, Kyle Busch just could not replicate the speed he had in the single run. He's 15th fastest in practice, and then just didn't have it. Felt good, but the speed wasn't there, which is a concern, but I'm not going to overreact to one single lap in qualifying. Overall, he looked fine in practice. He's been very steady at the road courses. His teammate, Austin Dillon, was fine. The RCR cars have been good at the road courses. To get to 13th, I don't think is too much of a stretch. And so most people will see that, and we know we got Chase place differential, and it's not expensive place differential. They're going to be pretty popular plays. And although point per dollar wise, we're seeing these guys, well, I mean, it's pretty much the same. So you know where the ownership is going to go. BK and Kyle Busch, going to be a little different. Suarez and Bowman seem to be great in that middle value range. But all should be popular to an extent. Obviously, I would say Busch would be most popular. Brad number 2. And that could be flipped or reversed. Then I think Bowman, Suarez, Logano is probably not going to carry anything. Barry's going to be popular. Zane will probably be the lower pivot. I think it's always going to carry ownership. Reddick, I like Preece. Already mentioned Larson. If you think Blaney can get it done, then that changes the whole slate. Buescher should probably rank a little bit higher. We have seen him qualify poorly in the past. He should also be as popular as Kyle Busch and Brad Keselowski. I'm pretty sure that you're going to be able to afford him. Gregson's another guy that's aggressive. I believe he's going to push it. Worries me. Might make too many mistakes, but I wouldn't write him off the board. You're in a GPP. You're getting a lot of lineups. You want to be a little bit different. He can move forward. He can be a decent point per dollar play if you're not going to the aforementioned plays. Michael McDowell as well. Again, another driver I think might be a little too aggressive, a little bit risky. You may not even need this play, but he could upset the apple cart a little bit. As we go down in this short podcast, I'm not really going to touch on these guys. There are some cutesy plays down here. I think Ross Chastain, if you think you can get aggressive and take over this race, could also be on the board. Will Brown, I just don't know. I would have liked to see longer runs. I think he might be too aggressive, push it. Yeah, he put in some hero laps, but a full stock car race, I'm just not sure it's going to work out. Great story. I don't believe I really need to go there. But again, this is a check back later in the day type of weekend. And my sentiment towards Will Brown could change. Don't really want to flirt with Corey LaJoie. I think even putting him in 14th is a very aggressive projection. Gibbs could pop up a little bit, just like Ross Chastain. They're drivers you might want to explore later in the day. Maybe if you have 2 lap leaders, and then you throw in these guys who cycle some fast laps, maybe lead a couple laps, and get a little bit more into the projection, because they save you a little bit of money. Ross Chastain at 8,300 could absolutely jump up this board quite a bit. I really am intrigued by AJ Allmendinger, to be quite honest. I think there's some speed here. I probably will not end up going there. But there's just something in the back of my head that says, boy, I wonder if AJ can win this race. The rest of these guys, not too enthralled with. Really disappointed so far with Martin Truex Jr. Could completely miss on this, but overall, was expecting the JGR Toyotas to have a pretty good notebook after the test, and Truex just seems to think that they don't have it. Now, can they get in the top 10? Yes, but that's not quite enough for me. They're clearly slower, or clearly behind some of those better teams this weekend that have better track position in a race that it seems like it's going to be a lot about track position. They can sneak into the top 10, but I don't know if it's going to be enough. We got the place differential chases. We got some of these values at the top. We got Reddick and the HMSs. That's where we're going. Hopefully that helps. Thanks for joining me here on the Fantasy NASCAR podcast, racefortheprize.com. If you want to get access to all the data, look at all the laps, break it down for yourself. Venmo, PayPal, Cash App. Blessed to have you guys listening. Sorry I didn't give you the straight picks, but I'll give you a general idea. Love you guys. Trip Life Fantastic.